you a couple ways to do this. One way, not many people are shown, and it's not in your book, but I'll go through both the way that they show you in your book. I'll go through a separate way to do it by hand, and then I'll show you how to use your calculator, which again is pretty intuitive. And this has to do with factoring expressions that have a leading coefficient of something other than 1. And so now it's going to be the ax squared plus bx plus c form, where a is some number other than 1. The process for doing this involves reverse foiling. And so you can use trial and error as one of the possibilities, and this is the way that your book suggests you do it. And so what you would do is you'd look to see, when you foil, the product of your first terms of these binomial factors has to give you 3x squared. So what are the only two values that you can multiply together to give you 3x squared? X and 3x. That's it. There's no other possibilities. And so you know those are going to be your first terms. Your last terms of these two factors, when you FOIL, have to give you a product of 2. So once again, the rule for this is the last terms give a product of 2, and when you FOIL, when you take your outer plus inner products, the sum of those terms has to be this middle term, outer plus inner, this 7x. So what possible factors can give you 2? Either plus 1 and plus 2, in either order. You don't know which order they might be in. And then also negative 1 and negative 2, right? Those are the factors of positive 2. Okay, so when you're looking at these, which of these, when you take your outer product plus your inner product, gives you 7x? Well, do we even need to check the negative numbers if we know the sum of the outer and inner products has to be positive 7? No. So we can eliminate these pairs. And so all we need to do is test these other two pairs. So is x times 2 plus 1 times 3x equal to 7x? So x times 2 is 2x, plus 3x is 2x plus 3x equal to 7x? No. So we can eliminate that pair. Let's go to the next. How about x times 1 plus 2 times 3x? So is 1x plus 6x equal to 7x? Yeah, so that becomes your factors. So you see what your factors are. Your answer would be x plus 2 times 3x plus 1. Okay, so this is called trial and error. And you're using the reverse FOIL method. Now, this method works well when your leading coefficient and your constant are both prime numbers. You guys know what prime numbers are? Okay, numbers that have two distinct factors, 1 in itself. Okay, so the smallest prime number is 2. Okay, 1 is not a prime number because it doesn't have two distinct factors, because the factors of 1 are 1 and 1. Okay, so that does not include it in a prime number. So 2 is the smallest prime number. If your leading coefficient and your constant are prime numbers, then trial and error is going to work pretty well. Okay, but what happens if they're not? If they're not, so let's say you have 4x squared minus 13x plus 10. Now when you look for this trial and error form, what are the different factors that give you 4x squared? You have x and 4x. You also have 2x and 2x. Okay. And what are the factors that give you positive 10? You have, again, the product is positive, so the signs are the same. They're either both positive or both negative. The sum of your outer terms, or your outer plus inner products, are negative. So do we even need to consider the positives? No. So I'm going to write those second, but you get negative 1 and negative 10. the other order, negative 10 and negative 1. You have negative 2 and negative 5, negative 5 and negative 2. And then you have all the positives of these, but again, you don't even need to test the positives on this. But if you tried to do trial and error here, how many different attempts are you going to have to do? 8 or a bazillion. I mean, kind of gross. But you have 8 different tries. You have to take negative 10x minus 4x. Does that give you negative 13x? No. Negative 1x minus 40x. Does that? No. So you'd have to continue that pattern until you found the one that gave you the negative 13 as your sum. Okay. So I suggest when you have coefficients other than a 1, or the leading coefficient and the constant that are not prime numbers, that you use the following method. Okay, so again, this isn't in the book. You don't have to rely on this because you guys have your calculators, but I want you to see it just so that when you are exposed to this again and your teacher does not allow you to use a calculator, you know how to do it. Okay, so here's the process. If you take that leading coefficient and your constant and you multiply these together, okay, so step 1, you're going to multiply constant and your leading coefficient. What is that product? 4 times 10 is 40. Okay, so what we're going to do is you look to see, are there 2 factors of this product whose sum is the middle term's coefficient? So what factors of the number from 1 add up to middle term's coefficient? And what factors of 40 equal negative 13? Negative 8 and negative 5, right? So negative 8 plus a negative 5 add up to negative 13. So if you rewrite this middle term as the sum of these, so step 3, you're going to rewrite the middle term as the sum of these factors. Is this line right here in blue the same value as the line in pink above it? Negative 8x minus 5x is still negative 13x, right? It's the same thing, just a different form. What you can now do in this is you can factor by grouping. So what common factor can you remove from these 2 terms here? Just these first 2 terms. 4 and x. When you remove a 4x from the first term, what's left? X. And when you remove a 4x from the second term, what's left? Negative. Just the 2, right? Because the x is coming out front. Okay, what common factor can you remove from this second pair of terms? What's common between these 2? Between negative 5x and 10 is negative 5. Again, whatever sign this is, you're going to remove that as part of the factor. If you remove a negative 5 from negative 5x, what's left? X. And if you remove or divide 10 by negative 5, what do you get? 10 divided by negative 5 is negative 2. Now, what you should notice if you're following this process is you can remove this common factor of x minus 2, and then the terms that remain form your other factor. So rather than test all 8 possibilities until you get the right one, if you can follow these steps, so after you rewrite the middle term, you're going to factor by grouping the first pair of terms and the second pair of terms. And then you're going to continue that factoring until you get your solution.